Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Holly Wharton. I've been an entrepreneur since 1999, and I know firsthand how difficult it can be to build a business without the right mindset. This is a podcast for those of us who struggle with showing up in our business with confidence and authenticity, who resist taking big action because of fears and doubts, who know deep down that it's possible to create something bigger, and yet you're not. This podcast combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business more easily in a way that feels aligned. This podcast features solo shows with me and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world, including my monthly co-hosted episodes with Joe Casey. My goal is to help you grow your business more quickly and easily by transforming your mindset. For me, mindset work is a lifelong practice, and I want to help you make a habit out of mindset work. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 235. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and as promised, we've got a slightly new feature on the podcast for 2018. As I mentioned in the last couple of episodes, we will be playing around with having special co-hosted episodes, kind of like the ones I do with Joe Casey, but with a different co-host every quarter. So today is the first of the special episodes, and I'm super excited to introduce Joanna Hennon as the co-host for first quarter of this year. Joanna has already been a guest 3 times on this podcast, episodes 86, 158, and 178, and I'm really excited about this collaboration. Joanna has her own podcast, the Soul Smart Podcast, which was launched mid-2017. Joanna helps ambitious leaders and change makers to create their reality with intention by using all the wisdom, power, and tools that they already hold within them. At the soul level, she talks a lot about being soul smart and running your business from a perspective of soul smarts. So today we're going to be talking about something really interesting that's kind of related to last week's episode. We're going to be talking about how to balance structure and intuition, how to get things done and still go with the flow, how to balance intuition and getting stuff done. And I think this is such an important topic because it's something I've struggled with, I know Joanna struggled with, as we talk about on this episode, and so many of my other online business friends and people in my community have also mentioned struggling. How do you find the right place on the spectrum between intuition and going with the flow? So this is a super practical episode. It's about 44 minutes long. And we're going to be talking all about our own personal journeys to finding what works for us in terms of structure and intuition. We're going to talk about how to use an online calendar and time blocking, which I did mention last week, what structure can do for you, why structure doesn't take away your freedom, how to balance structure and freedom, how to plan your content with some structure while still having kind of a wild card to go with the flow and talk about whatever is happening to you or for you at a certain time or place. We're going to talk about whether it's good to do 100% intuition or 100% structure, or whether you need to be somewhere in between. We're going to talk about how we would help clients who struggle with this particular issue. We talk about how to plan in downtime, why you need to be kind to yourself, how to avoid overscheduling, the question you need to ask yourself, not just every week, but every day to make sure you're doing what you need to be doing at any given moment. This is not just kind of a theoretical episode. We talk about really specific practical things that you can do. We talk about how to balance wanting a safety net versus trusting yourself, trusting the universe. We talk about why self-awareness is so important. We talk about how to build fun into the structure so that it's flexible structure rather than kind of like being in prison. There really are no blueprints on this one. You need to make your own blueprint. And in this episode, we give you the practical things that you can try so that you can play around with structure, intuition, and see what works for you. I love this episode. I'm super excited. This is our first episode that we're doing together for this year, and I'm really looking forward to the next one that we do next month. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you find it interesting and useful. Hello, it's Holly Wharton, and I'm here with Joanna Hennon. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Holly.
And today we're going to talk about how to get things done while still going with the flow. So we're going to talk about how to balance structure and intuition and intuitive action taking. And this is a big issue for both of us, and it's something that we also see a lot of our clients and people in our community struggling with. So I'm really excited about this topic.
Yeah, I am too. I think it comes up so much for intuitives who kind of have this kind of, as an intuitive, you even have a goal of going with the flow. It's not even like, it doesn't even always come naturally, but it's like this holy grail of like allowing yourself to go with the flow. And then when you start a big project like a business or a book or anything like that, and you need some structure, yeah, all these problems crop up because the two don't seem to marry very well naturally.
And I think it's also a problem because a lot of intuitive people really struggle with all of the online marketing stuff out there because it's all very much geared towards structure. So it's like, how do you find that happy medium between I want ease and flow in my business and I actually want to get stuff done and make stuff happen?
Yeah, it's true, actually. Everything is super structured, which it has to be, because if somebody's like selling you a course on something, it has to have a structure to it. And it's like, I even struggled with this in the processes that I teach, to put them into some kind of structure because otherwise you can't teach them. You have to have structure. But then when an intuitive or someone who wants to go with the flow tries to implement it, it can get a little bit weird and boxy.
So what has been your journey to finding that balance between intuition and structure?
A long journey. So I feel like I'm balanced now. I'll start with that. I feel like I'm in a really good place with that. And that is simply due to the fact that I hired a productivity coach last year and really kind of made myself learn about productivity and learn about my own productivity and how I work and what's best for me in terms of organizing my time and focusing and all these things. But before that, like I just resisted all structure altogether. Like I ignored any modules and courses that were about systems or structure. I was like, no, I'm intuitive. I don't need that. I go with the flow. I just basically ignored it all. I just thought it was completely against everything that I stood for. But what happened was I didn't really do that much in the end, or it was very unfocused. It was kind of like I did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it wasn't kind of geared towards one goal. It wasn't focused. It wasn't consistent even, because I had no idea what I did last week because I was going with the flow, So, yeah.
Okay, so now you've got this productivity coach, and assuming she gives you an action plan or you put an action plan together, how do you implement that action plan while still being intuitive about your work schedule?
I have a plan, but like I'm not a slave to the plan. So I think that's the key really for me, is to like understand that I don't have to stick to the plan. It's useful to have the plan, and then I know if I do something else instead, then I'm making a choice for something else, and then that's fine. But I have something to start with that I know. The plan is just so important because like it lets you know what you have to do. Like otherwise you don't even know what's involved in achieving the goal that you want to achieve. Like this at least forces you to make some kind of brainstorm what could possibly be involved and what you need to allow time for. So
I think that's especially important in big projects because I think intuitive people particularly struggle with big goals or bigger projects where it's like there's so many little steps to take, and if you don't sit down and map it out and give it a structure, it's so overwhelming you might not even get started.
yeah, indeed. So has that been your experience, Holly?
It's been kind of different for me because my mind used to be really structured and rigid and like super organized. And I went through this process, I don't know, maybe about 15 years ago or more, where I felt like I was too structured and too organized, and I just like went the other way and just it all went to hell. And then that was really confusing to me because I had been so structured my entire life, and it was like I feel like since then I've been trying to work my way back into finding this balance, and I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot now, but it was really unnerving because it was like I had too much structure and then I had no structure, and then it was like, I'm totally lost. What do I do? How do I function? And now, like I said, I think I'm in a pretty good place. Like I allow myself to be flexible. I'm more aware of my natural cycles of when I can focus and when I'm not. And I've gotten to know myself better, but it's been very much a journey of knowing what works for me rather than following someone else's plan.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm totally the same. It's about that self-awareness. And also I find about like a willingness to be compassionate and kind of soft with yourself. Because when I first actually started doing the productivity thing, I completely overscheduled. So like my whole life was like 2 to 3, I meditate, 3 to 4, I write, 4 to 5, I do that. Like there were no breaks ever. And I was just like on this clock constantly, and it was, oh my God, it was horrible. It was just absolutely horrible. And I ended up just really anxious and stressed out all the time. It was because like I wasn't planning in things that gave me that downtime. I wasn't planning in breaks. I wasn't planning in downtime. I wasn't planning in exercise or like lunch, blocking off lunch. And that's been a journey for me, that kind of self-love, being kind to yourself and allowing for kind of understanding that this is your life. Like, what's the point if you're living today in this totally stressed out space? What's the point?
Yeah. Okay, you said two things that I think are really, really important for us to like pick apart here. First of all, planning in downtime. Like, I use Google Calendar to plan my days and my weeks and my entire life. And I have time blocked out for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and they're blocked out. Like, no one can block in like a client session or anything on top of that. They're there. I might shift them a little bit, but they're there. I have my kickboxing classes in there. I have like personal journaling and like morning routine time in there. I have all that stuff blocked out to make sure it happens. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes I have to delete it if I'm extra busy or I shift it, but it's in there. Like, it forms the framework of my calendar. So how do you make sure that all of your downtime and your self-care time actually happens?
Well, my productivity coach, and I might as well name her because she's awesome. Yeah. And if anybody else is interested, then you should go to Jo Bendel. Her name is Jo Bendel, but I believe her website is jobendel.com, but we'll check that to make sure it's correct in the show notes.
Yeah.
And she made me, when I first started working with her one-to-one, she also runs a group, that's great, but one-to-one, she made me do the block in the self-care stuff first. And it was really the first time that I even blocked in like the times when I would like to get my son from school. Because before, like, I would let whatever happened during the day kind of decide that, where I didn't know. But now I was like, okay, no, on this day, he needs to definitely stay in the after school hours. But on this day, it's flexible. So why don't I make sure that I don't plan anything for that time and I can ask him what time he wants to be picked up? And that's a really nice thing for us to do. So yeah, I think you have to put it in first. It's like, it reminds me of something that my dad used to tell me about savings, that savings isn't like what you put aside at the end of the month, whatever's left over. No, like, you put that aside first. You decide how much you want to save, and you put that aside first before anything else happens. And it's the same sort of thing, right? It's taking care of yourself.
First. It's like the oxygen mask thing. We love using that analogy, but how often do we actually put that into effect?
I can't actually stand that analogy because I can guarantee you that if anything happens on that airplane, I will be putting on my son's mask first. There's no way in hell. Or, sorry if
that's okay.
I'm from a loud language like that.
Yeah, we are. Whatever you want.
Like, there's just no way that I would put my mask on first.
All right, so forget the oxygen mask analogy. Just schedule your downtime first.
Yeah, but I think that's just the only way to get it in, because otherwise it just becomes one of those things that you never have time for.
Yeah.
And I think if it's important to you, you have to put it in there. And downtime, if it's not important to you, then that's something to explore, because it should be. I don't do many shoulds, but that's really your time. And you don't have to spend it kickboxing or blocking out meals if those things aren't important, right?
Exactly,
but
yeah.
Whatever it is that makes you feel like you're taking care of yourself, maybe batch cooking or whatever it is, like, you have to schedule it in.
Yeah, definitely. So the other thing you said that I think is really important, and it's been a struggle for me, is being kind to yourself. So, like, if I don't get everything done, or if I don't get as much done, I have had the tendency to really beat myself up. And I think time batching has helped, because instead of just not doing it, I shift it to another day. But I still really struggle with not feeling good about myself if I don't do all the stuff that I wanted to do.
I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like, I used to struggle with it. I have to say that I've become quite good at that now. I don't really judge myself. Sometimes I get a bit like pissy with myself just because I feel like I made the wrong choice. Like, I should have done that stuff, because what am I choosing for instead? Am I really choosing to like stay in place instead of growing? But usually if I don't get everything done, it means that I've overscheduled because I'm actually quite a hard worker, So usually it actually means that either I've overscheduled or I forgot to include breaks. And I've like today I had all this stuff in my calendar and I woke up just feeling so horrible, really, really rotten. And I'm going to a conference in London on Thursday and to meet you, Holly.
Yay!
And I was like, no, I have to feel good. So I'm like, I'm just not going to do anything that's in my calendar. And some things I moved and some things I was like, maybe this doesn't need to be done at all. So I just deleted.
Yeah, and I think that's another really interesting thing that I do as well. So I use Asana for my tasks, but I also use emails. Like I'll email my stuff with like the subject in all caps, and that's the thing I have to do. And I find that if I use an app called Boomerang in my Gmail account to like make emails come back at a later date. And if I notice that I've been boomeranging either a task or an email too many times, then I've realized it's really low priority and maybe I don't need to do it. So I have learned to give myself permission to just delete stuff if I haven't been able to get around to it, because obviously it's not that important if I've not been doing it.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think it's just that level of self-awareness and being willing to ask the question.
Yeah.
Rather than just assuming. And that's really like you asked before, like how I do the structure and the intuition at the same time. And this is it, right? I regularly, like all the time, like 100 times a day, check in with myself and ask, does this still feel good? Like, do I still want to do this? Yeah. Do I still want to launch this thing? And if I don't, then I'll quit. I will. Yeah. Like, even if it's right before I'm supposed to be launched, well, maybe not right before. Probably then I would just take it as resistance and work on the fears and all that stuff. But just that permission to change your mind if it's no longer feeling good Yeah,
and I think that's a really important question to be asking yourself. So what has structure done for you? How has it changed your life and your business in addition to like getting stuff done?
Oh, it's completely changed everything. I've gotten more done in the past 5 months than I have like in the past 2 years, I think. It's just been more structured. I see myself moving towards something. Like, it's not just kind of random. I think, in business, I'm sure you have this too, Holly. Like, there's this pressure to, like, do all the things, and you have to, like, introduce systems and the client intake thing and the social media and the marketing and the writing. You have to blog and you have to podcast and all sorts of things. And, like, you can't actually do all those things and do them well, right?
No.
Yeah. So the structure kind of gives a focus and makes you make choices because you can see in your calendar how much time you have and what you want to spend that time on. Like my own podcast has lapsed a little bit, for example. And that's okay because I know it's a choice.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the thing. It's about making conscious choices about what you're going to prioritize rather than just doing whatever. And another thing you mentioned earlier is overscheduling. And I think time blocking and having everything visually blocked out in your calendar also helps prevent overscheduling, because if you had, an hour and a half blocked to do your bookkeeping, for example, and it took you 2 hours, then you know to schedule 2 hours in the next month so you won't be overscheduled or whatever. It really helps you visually see how much time something takes and how much time you have to do other things.
Yeah. Do you leave time in between tasks in your calendar?
If it's an appointment where I'm actually speaking with someone else, I always leave at least half an hour because I need to like kind of wind down from the previous call and then get ready for the next one. But with tasks, no, I don't. I usually put them back to back in the calendar because I tend to get a natural break anyway because I drink a lot of tea. So I'm always getting up to either make a new cup of tea or go to the bathroom. And so that creates like a natural break because I'm constantly getting liquids.
Wow, that's super healthy, Holly.
So I have a T&P break.
A built-in system there. And has becoming more structured again, because now you said like you started off structured and then you let go of structure and then presumably you've embraced some of that structure back now because you're running a successful business and you get stuff done, as I see. Like, how are you happy with that balance now? Like, has that changed anything for you?
Yeah, it has. I feel safer. It's like I trust myself now because I know I'm going to get stuff done rather than just being like, oh, la-da-da-da-da, whatever, the flowers and let's flow. I feel it's like I can trust myself. I feel like, safe is the word that popped into my head.
That's interesting because it's true. I can see that. And it's made me think that it makes me like less doubting.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm doing what I need to be doing. Like I know that I have a goal and I'm taking the steps towards that goal, and I'm kind of focusing on the part of it that I can control, which is what I'm giving my attention to, right? It just makes it, I can see the path that I'm taking. It's not kind of not throwing everything at it, or like, what's the other image that people use? Throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? And hope that something sticks.
The American way of making spaghetti. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it is. When I was in college when I was 18, that was how I was taught to make spaghetti. You throw it at the wall, and if it sticks, then it's done. But of course, that means
serious?
it's overcooked. Yeah, seriously, that's where it comes from.
Oh, that's really funny, because I know, this is a total aside, but I know this from when I directed a play called The Odd Couple, the female version of The Odd Couple. And in that, one of the characters had to throw linguine against the wall. I can't remember. I think it was because she was mad, or I can't remember why. I don't think she was doing it to test whether the spaghetti was cooked. But I just remember that very, very vividly, because my husband was in charge of making the spaghetti every night of the run. And we then had to throw it at the wall. So yes, anyway, quick aside.
The origins of throwing spaghetti at the wall. So one thing that I think is really important to talk about is that a lot of people are afraid that if they create a structure, that structure will take away their freedom. And they'll feel trapped and like stuck, and they won't enjoy their business anymore because they've got structure. So what's your experience been with that?
Yeah, I've definitely been like that. And it's not just to do with business either. I'm still like I feel like I'm in a good place in terms of my business with that. But for example, I still resist structure like crazy when it comes to, for example, healthy eating habits. And it's the exact same resistance. Like, I'm like, but it's boring to have that structure. Like that'll just be boring. I'll have kind of no joy left, you know?
That's interesting you say that, because I resist structure in terms of like meal planning. Like, we decide every afternoon what we're going to have for dinner, and my husband will go out to the store because we live in a small town and buy the stuff. But I really resist the concept of planning on Sunday or whatever what we're going to eat the entire week, because how do I know I'm going to feel like having chicken on Thursday?
See, but that's again, because we've done that, but again, you make the plan and you're flexible, right? So what we do is we plan out. I mean, sometimes something has to be in a certain day because it was cooked 2 days earlier and it'll go bad or whatever. But like, you can just plan in a certain number of meals for the week and then let yourself kind of move them around, right? I think it's the same concept. I think we forget that once it's true, and we forget all the time. We have this kind of inbuilt, really deep belief, really strong belief that structure like ties us into something.
Yeah.
That's not it. It kind of gives us like a frame.
Yes. Exactly.
To work within, it's like with children, they say, that children need kind of a frame within which then they can have freedom. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's kind of like creating that boundary within which you want to live, and Yeah,
that makes sense. So I think what we're saying is that you don't go 100% structure, 100% flow, but it's like a spectrum and you need to be somewhere in between. So what are your tips on how people can find that balance between structure and freedom? And I know this is highly personal.
It is highly personal. But I think really the two things you need to do is to create a structure, right? So you create your like weekly plan, or do your marketing at this time and you do your client work on this time, and just batch stuff. Just know loosely what you want to do with your week. And then the other thing is to check in with yourself regularly, right? And Jo Bendel, my coach, she teaches which I don't do. Sorry, Jo. You'll start like an end of the day review.
Yeah.
Right? So that you see like what you've done and what you haven't done and what you need to do the next day, so you can switch it around at that point. Right? So, but it's constantly kind of checking in. Like, is this still the right thing? Is there anything else that needs to happen? Does this still feel good? Do I still even want to do this?
I think one thing that I've done on and off over the years that I found really, really useful is have a certain amount of time each day to get stuff done. And then I've got a whole list of stuff that I want to do. And then I pick the 3 most important tasks from that list that I want to do that day. And I do those high priority things.
Oh, so that's really nice.
So it's like I've got this basket of stuff to do. And then I pick, today I'm going to do this, this, and this. Either because that's what I feel like doing, or because it's the most important, or whatever, but I focus on just 3 things. And if I get other stuff done, great, but I've done the 3 most important things.
Yeah, it's really cool, because then you have that kind of freedom to do whatever you feel like doing that day. Yeah. And you could, like, if that's important to you, and you can't do it every day, Like I wouldn't be able to do that every day. Like I have too much stuff on. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to fit that in every day. But you could like schedule that in on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yep. Exactly.
Is your free time
Yeah,
to work,
exactly.
right? And you just pick and choose. I knew one lady who only did structured stuff in the mornings, and in the afternoons she would watch TV, and like had a product based business. So she would watch TV and like pack stuff and address envelopes and like what a cool life is that?
I like that. Structure in the
right?
morning, packing in the afternoon.
Yeah, and like with the TV on even, like it's, whatever it is that you like doing, whatever it is that makes your life pleasant, I think we need to build that into whatever structure we choose, right? Like I like to have time to just surf on the web. I know that that's like a productivity no-no to just kind of scroll on Facebook, but I actually really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm no longer doing it daily.
Yeah.
But I like on a Saturday morning, instead of doing something productive, I love to just go onto the internet and like I'll read this email and read this post and maybe watch this video that somebody posted and just do that. And if I don't have that time, then I really crave it the following week, and I spend most of my time trying not to scroll on Facebook.
Right, but that's a conscious decision that you're making to spend a half an hour or so.
Yeah, or more.
Just playing around on the internet.
Yeah, but that's it. But it's a self-awareness.
Yeah.
Like I know that I like that.
Yeah.
Just like I also like creating images, which I'm really crap at. Like this is not one of my skills, but I really enjoy it. So once in a while, I'll just let myself do that, and then that means that I'm not missing out on that, and I'm not craving whatever it is that gives me during the week, and then I can be more productive, right?
Yeah. I think that's important. So,
please tell me you have stuff like that too.
Oh, yeah. Like I've designed like podcast graphics for podcasts that I probably will not ever start. Like I had an idea for a podcast and I was like, "Ooh, I should do the graphic for it." So I have this really beautiful graphic that I love, but I'm probably not ever going to start the podcast because I don't need a second podcast.
Probably not, no.
So yeah, and I get what you mean. I get these creative like cravings where I have to like design something or I don't know. Yeah, I love it. It's so much fun.
Although that also reminds me, you have to be careful for anybody who's listening, like when those cravings come. Because for example, I had the biggest craving to redesign my Facebook group banner right in the middle of my last launch. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like I have to drop everything. This banner has to be redesigned right now. And thankfully I caught myself. I was like, what? Clearly this banner can wait till next week, Clearly I have other more important things that need to happen today.
Okay, that's really, really important because it's about stepping back and looking at the bigger picture of the day and the week and the month and your plan and seeing if that creativity craving is actually like a self-sabotage or a way to procrastinate doing the bigger stuff.
But that's like we said at the beginning, right? That's the self-awareness, and that's a journey that's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
And it's also like I find that all of this stuff is also like an allowing yourself to be yourself. Like I have a lot of clients who have multiple interests and multiple ideas, like a lot of creatives, and I mean you're like that, I'm like that, right? And it's like we spend a lot of time kind of talking about how to choose that next one, right? And you just have to allow yourself to have them. Like there's not a judgment on that. Like it's okay that you have lots of ideas, right? Yes, it is better to choose one now, but you don't have to choose only one forever.
Yeah.
Right? You can focus on one thing now and another thing next month.
Exactly. Yeah,
Totally.
but you can only do one thing at a time.
But you can only really do one thing at a time because otherwise your attention is too dispersed, right?
Yeah. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about was content planning, because that's something that you've been adopting lately and it's been working really well for you. And it's something that I've never managed to do. So let's bring up content planning.
Yeah, it works pretty well for me. Please don't judge me by my lapsed podcast. It works pretty well for me. But really, the only way it worked is by leaving in blanks. So I'm not the kind of person who could like create or even plan my whole content for the year, right? But I can probably say, okay, like I want to be talking about this in this month and this in this month, and some possible ideas are this and this, and then I'll leave some space for inspiration as well. So I don't plan at all. I kind of half plan.
So you have like a theme for each month?
Not even. It's not even that. I don't like because then I get too kind of, but I work with several different topics. So I'll have I try to kind of vary the posts or episodes or whatever it is that I'm creating. So like on my blog, I'll have the podcast show notes when I record an episode. Now I've started doing book reviews as well, because I used to be a book blogger and I really missed that. So I have book reviews, and then I'll have like posts that relate more to business maybe, and posts that relate to spirituality, and posts that relate to the law of attraction. So I kind of, when I plan, like I make sure to kind of have one on this broader subject, one on this broader subject, and then we'll see, and yeah, it's really only half planned. And that's the only thing that has ever worked for me. I've never been able to stick to a proper content calendar.
Yeah, neither have I, and I've always wanted to, because I love the idea of a content calendar. And right before the holidays, I was looking for what would be a fun book I could get for Christmas. And I ended up not getting anything. I was just buying novels and reading novels. But I saw this book it was like a journal to create your content planner for your blog. And I was like, oh, so much fun. And then I realized, am I actually going to use it? And the reality is no.
No. So I bought that, or something similar. I have that.
Yeah. And?
And I never used it.
It's so attractive though. I want it, but I know I'm not going to use it.
I'm going to question you on this. Do you really want the content calendar? Like, I feel like I thought I wanted the content calendar, but what I want is my content to be sorted. Like, I think for me, it's that. I want that ease of knowing that it's all there.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's not so much like trusting in myself that I have content for an entire year, every year ongoing, and not getting up to, oh my God, what am I going to talk about on my next podcast episode? Because my podcast used to be pure interviews, and that was super easy because I had a massive spreadsheet of people I wanted to talk with. Then when I started doing more solo episodes, it was like, oh my God, what if I can't think of anything to say this week? And now I'm doing even more solo episodes than before, and I'm finding that the solo episodes are the ones that I usually record just like a week or two before they go live, so I'm not recording like 8 weeks in advance like I used to, but it's like, I'll get struck with this like inspiration for a topic, and then boom, I do it, and it just works. So I kind of feel like I'm living on the edge, and I wish I had that. I just like the idea, like the safety net of having a whole content plan, but really it's I'm working fine.
But that's it. And I mean, it's actually a spiritual discussion, because it's instead of that safety net, instead of need, it's again, I'm going to bring it back to money. I don't know why I'm bringing everything back to savings, but it's exactly that same thing. When I was working on, I wanted a certain amount of money saved as a safety net before, like, I took a certain decision in my life. And I remember the coach I was working with at the time, she was a law of attraction coach. And she was like, but that's actually like not trusting the universe, right? Because you're basically saying, I probably won't do very well.
Yeah.
So I'll probably run out of things to say. So it would be nice to just have the safety net for when that happens. And so it's really that trust piece that's important, right? That whatever inspiration you get is exactly what needs to come through you at that point.
Yeah.
And I think like that's really interesting. There was a time, and we've spoken about this. In fact, we were supposed to do a challenge, weren't we, at some point to keep each other accountable. But like, I would start my day by like tuning into my guides and channeling, specifically like, what am I meant to teach? This was when I was stepping into that role of spiritual teacher. I was like, fine, you guys, if I'm a teacher, like, what am I going to teach? So I would start my day by channeling what I was supposed to talk about. And it wasn't like, I could never have planned that, like the topics that I was getting these downloads on weren't topics that I would have thought of that I had anything to say about really sometimes. But it was fantastic, and people resonated because it was in the moment.
Yes.
And so everybody was in that same energy.
Yes.
And people loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, the same thing happens for me when I write my newsletters, the rare occasion that I do, and I write like what's going on for me in the moment. Those are the newsletters where people hit reply and they're like, oh my God, me too, I'm going through the same thing. And that's the kind of thing that I feel like I would miss out on if I had a content calendar.
But you can always like leave. This is I think where that flexibility comes in, and that like playing with that balance between the structure and the flow, right? Because you can leave space for that. It's really like, it's almost like structuring in that spontaneity.
Flexibility.
Which kind of logically doesn't make any sense, but it is that, right? Yeah. So planning in a half hour every day to channel content, or one day a week,
Exactly.
writing something that's just in the moment, or
Exactly.
Yeah,
So you were sitting down for half an hour every morning and channeling content. So you had the structure of sitting down and channeling content,
exactly.
but you didn't know what was going to come through. Like it
Mm-mm.
wasn't like, today I'm going to channel trust. Tomorrow I'm going to channel
Yeah, exactly.
marketing.
And I didn't know where that content would be good for, So
Yeah.
I didn't know. It wasn't like, okay, so it's a Tuesday and in this group, this is hashtag ask a question day, whatever. So I'm going to channel a question. No, I would channel a paragraph on something. And then I'd be like, okay, what am I going to do with this now? And sometimes it would be just a Facebook post. And sometimes in fact, I usually did both because I've learned to repurpose stuff. So I'd do a Facebook post and some group hashtag post, and then I'd split it up into sentences for Twitter. But I ended up expanded into a whole blog post or a podcast episode. So you can do a lot with that. Just a paragraph. It wasn't even half an hour, right? It doesn't take very long. But the structure was there too, and this was in addition to actual structured stuff. So this was in addition to actual planned content that was going towards something that I was working on, a launch of something or a program or whatever.
So what would be your biggest tip for someone who's listening to this and they're like, how do I find my balance between structure and intuition?
I think you need to start with the structure. Right now, we're recording this in January, and I had this conversation with my Soul Space group today. Pretty much my answer to any question anybody asked was, you need to give yourself that space to dream about what you want first. I think you have to know what you want. You have to know what that goal is.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what your business will look like or what your project will look like or what you're creating specifically, then focus on a feeling, And if your goal then is to be happy, then you could even plan in half an hour a day of happy time and see what comes up, what would make you happy that day. It's a reminder to stay aligned with the goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So start with the vision and then work backwards and see what that means for today, how you could bring that in today.
Exactly. And play around with it. See what works for you. I think this is very much a trial and error thing. Because like we said, it's kind of a spectrum. It's probably not going to be 100% intuition or 100% structure. It's going to be somewhere in between. So try time blocking, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, try something else. But keep playing with it. And be aware that it's going to take time for you to find what works for you. Because I think so often we want to just follow someone else's blueprint and be like, I'm going to download her PDF with her blueprint for her thingy, and I'm going to apply it, and it's going to be perfect. And it's not, because it's her blueprint, not yours. So you've got to play around with it.
Definitely play around with it. We're all different. We all have different needs, different energy levels at different times, all sorts of things. And you definitely have to play around. How about you, Holly, then? What would you suggest? I'm curious now.
Yeah, okay. I would say, I love time blocking. So I would say maybe start out by blocking out time in your calendar for the stuff that you have to do, like eat. And then block out some time for, and if you've got kids, block out kid time stuff to pick up the kid from school or whatever you do with kids. Sorry.
Yes,
whatever it is the kids need.
Yeah, they also need to eat.
Yes. So do all the stuff that you have to do, because that will show you how much free time you have in your calendar. Then block in the self-care stuff, the personal stuff that's going to keep you aligned and on track and your soul happy. And then see how much time you have to do the business stuff that you want to do and where it fits in and how you want to do it. And pay attention, and this has been really, really important to me, is how does your mind work throughout the day? Are you a super morning person? Are you an evening person? Are you an afternoon person? When is your brain good at doing stuff? And plan your day around that if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the most important thing is just to start, right?
Yeah, just do something.
Do something, choose something and try it out and see what works and then tweak and just remembering that the most important thing is that you feel good, because that's the good energy. You'll be in a good space and you'll attract more good stuff.
Yeah, because if you hate your business because you're too busy doing stuff all day, then what's the point?
Oh my God, that was so me a couple of years ago. Okay. I'm so glad not to be there anymore. I remember I thought I had to post in all the groups, and most of the time in the evening, my husband would be handing me my dinner. And I'd be like, just one more, it's market day. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really happy to say that it's possible to find that balance, whether even if you are an intuitive and want to go with the flow more or feel like structure would stifle you. It's not necessarily the case. You just need to find the right structure for you, right?
And you can make your structure flexible.
Totally.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like in iron bars.
Certainly not. It's not jail. It's supposed to support you, right?
Exactly.
That's the thing to remember.
Exactly.
It's supposed to support you. So if it's not helping you to achieve your goals, then you need a different system.
Exactly. So, Joanna, if a client came to you and was like, not getting anything done with my business, like, I have all these things that I want to do, I have goals, I'm not achieving my goals, I like to go with the flow, and I'm really afraid of structure, like, what should I do? How would you work with that client?
I always start with the end result in terms of how do you want to feel. And it's not necessarily like, what do you want to create? But how do you want to feel? And then we work backwards and we bring that back in terms of like choosing what to focus on. So I definitely encourage people to focus on something, to choose something like, what are you creating now? That something should be leading you towards how you want to feel, obviously. So like, if you want to feel like joyful in your business, don't make the next task something that you really hate. Right?
Or outsource it to someone else.
Yeah, you can do that. So, and then for choosing like what to focus on, I always talk about following your highest excitement, which comes from Bashar. That's something we can link to as well. He always talks about that. It's like he's a channeled entity like Abraham. And so to follow the point, that choice of highest excitement, which of the things on your list excites you most, right? And of course, all of us will have things that have to get done. We have to pick up the kids from school, presumably. So there will be things but most things probably don't have to get done. You don't have to do a lot of the things that people say you have to do. And I think online business is such a great example of that. And there are also examples of people who are totally super, super, super successful. And they did that without a list, without a website, without a newsletter, without any of the things that we think now.
Without posting in 30 Facebook groups a day.
Right. So the possibilities are really endless, which is why you follow that point of highest excitement. So I would start with that intention of how you want to feel, work backwards, and then support that person in following their highest excitement step by step towards how they want to feel.
I like that.
How about you?
So I work with the mindset side of things. So I would obviously first start out with like, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to do in your business? Like, what are your goals? But because I work more with the mindset than with the practical action kind of thing, like we do create an action plan at the end, but it's more like, what do you need to believe in order to make that happen? Like, who do you need to be? How do you need to step up? How do you need to show up to make that happen? What are your current beliefs about your ability to achieve this goal? What are your current beliefs about taking action? Like, what do you need to believe instead? Like, picking apart the mindset side of things and then using a technique, usually heart-centered energy work, to reprogram beliefs at the subconscious level so that you believe at that very deep level that you can do this. You are capable of doing this. Writing blog posts is easy for you. Sales is easy, whatever. Yeah. And oftentimes, I was just thinking about this morning, a lot of the work I do with people involves making business easier. So what are the beliefs you need to make business easier and to do the stuff you need to do more easily rather than like uphill slogging all the time?
Yeah, it's the same for me. My work is about success being easier. And it's the same. That's what we all want, right? In the end, that's what we all want, to do what we love and get paid for it and enjoy our lives. And so anything that helps with that is great.
Exactly. Including structure.
Including structure, indeed.
All right. So should we wrap this up? I think we've given people enough to chew on here. Lots of ideas to play around with and figure out where they sit on the spectrum between structure and intuition.
Definitely. That's a lot to play with. Just remember, if you're feeling overwhelmed, choose something.
Just pick one thing.
Yeah, pick one thing, your highest excitement, whichever one you're most curious about or most kind of feels a bit like buzzy.
Yeah, exactly.
Do that one for now.
Don't try all the things.
No, don't try all the things. And let us know, right?
Yeah, get in touch.
I would love to know how this works out for people.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to put all of our links in the show notes, but where can people find you? Where's the best place to get in touch?
Gosh, shouldn't be a hard question. So I have a website at joannahennon.com and I run a group called The Greatness Collective on Facebook. So those are probably the best places to find me. But I'm Joanna Hennon across all social media. So so you can feel free to message me or tweet at me or whatever.
All right, good. And you can either email me at holly@hollywharton.com or you can go to my website, hollywharton.com, and see my links to all my stuff, including Facebook. All right.
Cool.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought of this week's show. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and get in touch. I would love to give you a shout out on the show if you'd like to share your perspectives. Also, I would love for you to join me in my private Facebook group. I know I say this every week, but podcasting is very much a one-way conversation. I was just talking at you, and so was Joanna for the last 45 minutes. So I would love for you to join me in the private Facebook group. Joanna's also a member, so you can get in touch with her there. And let us know what you thought of the episode, and, we'd love to have your feedback. It's a group dedicated to exploring business mindset, how you can get the mindset you need or want to achieve your dreams. So I'd love to see you in there. You can go to hollywharton.com/group and you'll be redirected to the Facebook group. Finally, whether you've been listening to the show for a while or whether you've just heard your first episode, if you're drawn to learning more about mindset work and you'd like to learn about how you can work with me, please get in touch or head over to hollywharton.com/call, CALL, and you can book in a call with me to learn more. I would love to work with you and help you transform your mindset. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on iTunes. It would really mean the world to me, and I love reading them, so thank you. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/235 for the show notes on this episode. Next week, I will be back with something special. As I said, this year we're doing a new format for the podcast. So each month you will have 2 solo episodes from me, 1 episode with Joe Casey, 1 episode with my quarterly co-host, which for the first quarter is Joanna Hennon. And then on those rare occasions that there's a 5th Monday in the month, you'll be getting a little something special that I don't do very often in the podcast. So tune in next week and you'll get to listen to that. Thank you very much for listening and have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for the topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and learn more about business mindset, join my private community for entrepreneurs at hollywharton.com/group. That will redirect you to the Facebook group. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you so much.